Hello and welcome to Channels Book Club. I am Olakunle Kasumu. The headlines are often full of news that make us worry about the future of our country. Usually you will read about one form of leadership failure or another. Or you will hear about another role model who has failed the test of being a worthy example to our children. Whether in government, private organizations, or in the religious sector, we always find examples of moral and leadership failings. But the encouraging thing is that as much as many of those cases are disheartening, many others are encouraging. There are men and women we can point to as exemplary role models, winners, pacesetters, and true leaders. The critical factor in determining how such examples, both the good and the bad, have turned out in life is parenting. Experts have told us that parenting is a critical element that determines how we turn out. Unfortunately, in the discussions about how Nigeria can become a great country in the future, we hear a lot about leadership, restructuring, resource control, constitutional amendments, and institutional reforms. Hardly do we ever hear about parenting. Yet, it seems to be the key in raising great leaders and building great societies. This is why we were happy to find Joy Oguchi and her new book, Purposeful Parenting, A Journey. Joy is an educator, school administrator, and counselor for adolescents. She has a Master of Education degree in Education Administration and an SAC diploma in counseling children and adolescents. Her book, Purposeful Parenting, A Journey, examines the nurturing of 4 critical aspects of a child's life: intellectual, physical, spiritual, and social development. The book highlights the important question, what type of parent are you? And it also outlines what every parent needs to do to be successful in raising complete children. Joy joined us to explore her book. But let's first of all check out a few excerpts from Purposeful Parenting, A Journey, before we go into the interview we had with her. Please stay with us. Joy, thank you for joining us on Channels Book Club.
My pleasure.
Nice
Thank
to have
you for
here.
having me.
Purposeful Parenting, A Journey. Parenting is a major challenge in Nigeria, all over the world now, isn't it?
Yeah, so true.
Tell me about what exactly inspired you to write this. Is it that global challenge of parenting that you've observed, or is there any personal experience you've had that inspired this book?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that question. Basically, started off when I got married 18 years ago, and desired to, start having children and all that. So my husband and I decided, someone needed to be home. He's more of a family person, and he has this love for children, and wanted to really be there for his own children as well. So it was a common thing between us. So we agreed that both of us didn't have to be out there, and someone needed to be home to take care of the children. So at the time I was pregnant, um, decided I wasn't going to continue with my work. And so I stayed back home to take care of I had the baby, started taking care of them. That happened for 7 years until my youngest was ready to go into preschool. You know, when you drop off the older one and we're going back home, at the point where she wanted to, she would cry until we got back home because she wanted to stay back in school. So we knew it was time for her to go as well. So we enrolled her in a preschool, and I then went back to work. Also got a job that was flexible enough for me to be there for them. So during those 7 years of staying at home with the children, I had this desire, to do a good job of parenting, because I am a product of good parenting as well. I have a lot of examples from my parents. So I began to observe parents who I think were doing a good job. I put some of them, and they began to mentor me. Because I wasn't working at that time, I would go to one of their offices on call up and say, do you have some time? Can I come just share some time with you? And we would talk about children. They had much older children, and, they mentored me. And I began to see a crack in society. I went back to education. When I went back to work, I had to go back to education. And that also exposed me to, a lot of these things, happening with parents and children. Parents are so busy and all that. So that was
those experiences planted the seed
the
in you.
seed in me, yes.
Now, you've called this purposeful parenting. I noticed somewhere in there that you compared purposeful parenting with passive parenting. And that caught my attention a lot. There's a lot of passive parenting going on today, isn't it?
Yes, yes. The idea there is parenting has to be intentional. It's intentional. Parenting is intentional. We sometimes we think that, it's just one of those things. We have these children. It's one of the things that God has designed to happen, that we have children, and then, we just keep going and whatever comes out of it. But we need to be intentional in our parenting. But what you see is passivity, where even when parents are there, they're really not there. We just do things. We're not, finding out. We're not having that connection, with our children. There's no, I read a book years back that says we need to get out of the faces of our children and get into their hearts. And that's what we're not doing. We're there, but we're not there. So that is passivity. Yeah.
Do you think there is a parenting crisis on our hands, if I may put it that way, using that expression?
Yeah.
Do we have one in Nigeria particularly?
Yeah, right now I believe we do have crisis in our hands, because even the society, the economy hasn't helped. Yeah, in other countries you would have flexible work hours and all that, which are not available to us as much. But again, I believe there is a way we can go around it, to balance these things. Parents are out there working. They need to work, yes. They need the income to take care of these children that we're talking about. But at the same time, what we're not doing right is finding a balance. Find that balance that gives us the opportunity to do what we need to do as parents, and also get fulfillment in what we do, for a living, in our businesses and our jobs. For me, part of it is the decision to go back to education. That was what informed it, because I needed to be there. I like to work. I like to dress up in the morning, go to work, you know, be involved with other people. I'm a people's person, you know. So those 7 years of staying at home were, you know, it was a lot of sacrifice for me, but I had to do it because I chose to do it, and I was happy doing it. But then when I was ready to go back to work, I had to find something that would, you know, also give me that flexibility. And eventually, I had my kids in the school where, you know, I worked, and so that gave that to me. So if we're intentional about it, and it's a desire, something we want to do, we can find a way around it. Everybody doesn't have to leave their job like I did or be a teacher, but they can find something that they can do to also help them find that balance.
Fantastic. Now, you wrote somewhere here about self-esteem of
Yes.
children, how to make sure the children grow up with very good self-esteem. And then you then, somewhere under that, you then spoke about physical abuse. You know, so I was curious. I wanted to ask you, because this is a common issue in Nigeria, physical abuse. Where do you draw the line between physical abuse and disciplining?
Well, discipline is very important in parenting. You can't take it out. You can't. And why is it so? It's clearly, even the Bible tells us that there's foolishness in the heart of a child. It's there. It's not anything. It's not. They're not. It's not demonic or anything. It is just because they are children, and children would behave like children. And when they do behave like children, you know, the whole essence is helping them to mature. If we don't help them mature, they can't continue to behave like children. So when they reach a particular age and they're not behaving, you know, like they're that old, then we introduce a bit of discipline. You know, we don't just look away and say, oh, they're children. So we have to be able to draw that line to know that no, at this age we shouldn't behave like this. You know, and that's where discipline comes in. I learned from my father, you won. My dad would actually warn you 3 times. He would quote the dates that you did, you know, similar things. And the 3rd time, when he went behind his door, you know, you knew he was coming out with...
The cane was out.
You know, so... Yeah, that gave enough notice for you to know, you know, you've done this, you shouldn't do this, you know. So it's not the first thing you pull out. However, when you do pull it out, do not flog your child in anger. When we're angry, we shouldn't even use the cane or use anything or try to beat our children. Don't do that in anger, because when you do, there is the tendency of hurting the child, and that's where the physical abuse comes in. But we can correct our children in love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that you also spoke about, wrote about not just physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and a whole, I mean, lots of things here. This is your first book, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How challenging was it writing? 3 years?
3 years. It was quite challenging, and well, 3 years was when I began to put it together, but I started really nursing the idea, you know, much earlier. And a few times I thought I was ready, I wanted to publish. The challenge there for me, the most important challenge that I had to face was the fact that I had young children. And a few people who knew about it said to me, you know, the world is going to judge you. The world will judge you, and, you know, people want to hear from people who have adult children, you know, then they know, okay, your children have gone through all the stages, but your kids are still young. And so sometimes I think about those things, I draw back, and that is what is important. It's not about you.
Thank you very much, Joy. It's been nice having you on the Channels Book Club.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Nice book you have.
Thank you. Thanks.